So welcome to It's Not All About the Numbers, the leadership podcast that doesn't just focus on the bottom line. My name is Chris, hello, and that's Mike.
Hello.
And today we are going to have a slightly different approach to our podcast because this week is launch week and we've got various things happening which we're going to go into. But first of all, if you like what we're doing, please hit subscribe. We've only been going for a few episodes, but it's always encouraging to see people subscribing. And if you really like what we're doing, then why not click the 5-star button, because it all really helps. But first off, so Mike, how was your week?
It's been a chemical week this week, so I've had a bit of a cold, and I feel like I'm rattling around with pills and sprays and stuff because I've got quite a lot of project work on at the moment. So it's that classic self-employed, can't stop working to have a sick day thing. So lots of head down, prepping for the Open Data Institute Summit, whilst rattling around full of tablets and chemicals.
It's amazing how resilient you realise you are when you're self-employed and you have to work to earn money.
Well, I don't know about resilient, and I don't know about how high performing I've been, but hey, I'm still here.
Yeah, hanging in there. Yeah, good. I mentioned, I think last episode, a couple of episodes, I've started my training program, my personal training program. It's I have to keep you updated on it because I might need some motivation over the weeks, but it's not gone very well in the last week, but I am determined to get back to my cardio fitness and looking beautiful for the events that we do.
It's nothing to do with having to fit into that suit that you've had for a few years.
It's everything to do with that, yeah. And the fact that there's some imaginary 2 inches have popped out from somewhere. I don't know where, but I'm going to get rid of those 2 inches and I'll look amazing in the suit again. Yeah, the other thing is we've been all about the academy, the GENCFO Academy. So a huge amount of work goes into it. It's 6 months cycle of work, and it's this week. So that's been pretty amazing, and it's just nice because we're feeling like it's good. The work's done, and there's a lot more to come. But when you get into this stage, it's just time to enjoy it. Really,
that sounds good. I wondered if why don't you tell me a bit more about the academy and why you think it's important? What actually is it? What happens, and why is it important?
Like everything I've done with GenCFO, to be completely honest, and this might sound a bit odd, but I have just tested and learned my whole way through GenCFO. It started off as a group of people just coming together for conversation, and then we started to do more things. And the academy itself is kind of a result of people asking questions like, how do I do this? How do we get started? What sort of things should we be doing? What sort of technology should we be focused on? How do we get the balance right? So we have a sister summit to the academy, which is all about thought leadership and top down and why you do things. But the academy is all about getting stuff done. And I think most people are really overwhelmed, when they start searching for anything on digital transformation or anything around technology. It's just overwhelming. You've got every consultancy in the world flooding the internet with helpful things, but also very hype things. The academy is there to sort of try and bring a bit of clarity to the subject, specifically for business CFOs, business accounting and finance teams, because as much as this is a sort of general change, you've got to have that sort of specific conversation per function for it to really resonate.
How does it work though? Is it an opportunity for people to pitch their products and sell stuff, or is it something else? How does that work?
So we're agnostic when it comes to technology, because to be honest with you, the technology's been there for years. And if you search the listings, there's lots of websites about how to find technology. So we don't really focus on the technology, and we certainly don't encourage tech vendors to turn up and do a demo. It's a bit of waste of time. We can go and find that anytime. And if you go onto our Tech 100 listing, you can book demos and you can do all that sort of stuff. This is all about practitioner to practitioner, peer-to-peer learning, not necessarily from within the finance teams as well. Yes, we've got the new Microsoft CFO coming to talk, but and we've got an IBM director of AI, but we've also got the PwC head of AI public policy coming to give a slightly different perspective. We've got a keynote speaker on generative AI and the consultancy that she runs. So, because I think that outside point of view is really helpful to show us what we don't know, because there's an assumption, I think, sometimes that we know what we need within a function, but actually when you start talking to the business about what they want and you start getting those outside opinions, it sort of shifts your perspective a bit. But yeah, it's definitely not a demo day.
But so from my understanding of how GenCFO works, how what you've just described is like another level of, it's almost like jargon busting, tech busting, and peer support, and bringing people together to help each other. Because I think one of the things that I've observed in businesses is that people assume that a function is expert in everything about its area of work. So finance is expert in everything about finance, including the technology and the implementation of things. And what I think is great about how GenCFO works is that bringing together of people in a safe space to allow them to explore that stuff, so they don't feel exposed within the business environment. They've got kind of like that safe area.
You know, I'm a massive advocate of peer learning, because I feel like it's you know, you find shortcuts and you find sort of trusted partners and you find sort of use cases that you're prepared to go with first because, you know, another CFO or another finance team have done it. You know, and we've not traditionally trained in digital transformation, you know, no one is really, and it's moving so quickly. So I think, you know, it sort of acts as a bit of a shortcut. You can definitely get inspiration from the technology, but you can get inspiration from the people and the stories. And you know, if I'm a CFO, I would probably want to hear from other finance people about what they're doing rather than a consultant first or someone outside of the business. But it can help to inspire, you know, which is why it's great to have you on the podcast, because, you know, you sort of pick holes in my finance perspective from an outsider's point of view, which I think is exactly what we need, because I do feel there's a bit of an identity shift happening with finance leaders. You're
referring to my strapline of "I'm not an accountant, Mike," yeah?
Yeah, well, exactly.
I've got two other questions actually on the academy that I wanted to ask, which is, so who are you expecting to attend the events? What kind of people? So you mentioned obviously CFOs and finance functions, but is it open to others as well?
It's an open event. There is these things do cost money to put on, so there is a ticket price, but it's, you know, very much open to all. It's a low ticket price. We expect people from IT to turn up who want to work out the functional side of life. You know, what is it that their finance people want from them? We expect everybody in the accounting and finance space to turn up. The chances are, you know, you're going to have more senior leaders going to the summit in May, and you're going to have more of the sort of delegated finance leadership team and finance managers coming to the academy, because they're the ones actually doing it. But, you know, from the data, we actually see, you know, it's a real range of people. We don't really focus on the sort of micro and the startup side of things, because the solutions there are very different. And, you know, everyone would have seen the adverts for, you know, Xero and QuickBooks. We're not on that side. You know, we're in the sort of larger enterprise mid-market side. So the use case is there. And I don't know whether you saw that Workday advert about being a finance and HR rock star, which
everybody's seen that, I think.
Made me laugh and hated it all at the same time. We're not rock stars, nor should we try to be rock stars. I don't think any CEO wants their CFO to be a rock star, taking risks and probably not got the best critical decision making out there. But I think, you know, it's about trying to get people from the accounting and finance world, but also outside the accounting and finance world who may be working with those stakeholders.
Well, that is exactly an observation I made. So on our previous podcast that we've recorded, we've spoken to people and touched on business partnering a bit. And business partnering is a two-way thing. So actually the thing that I found really interesting working with you, GenCFO, and attending some GenCFO events is actually understanding more about the problems and questions within finance that then helps me articulate what I'm trying to achieve and I'm trying to do in a way which they understand. So actually it's I think there's a real opportunity for people outside of finance to get a look under the hood a little bit of what's going on. I've got a final question, which is the obvious question, which is, okay, so we've talked about the academy. How do people find out more, sign up, or find out after the event get hold of some content.
This is a great plug. I didn't know you were going to do this, so thank you.
It's quite all right. I've been learning.
No, it is a huge part of what I do, so I appreciate it. But no, the best way to do it is to just search GENCFO Academy, which is GENCFO, and you can go onto that website and you can see the agenda. You can see all the speakers. It's a 3-day event, and I think you're going to love it. So, if you have time on the 7th, 8th, and 9th of November, which is this week, then go for it. If not, you can buy the replays, and there's also a community that's associated with it, so you can join the community for free and you can take part in all those conversations. So I think the conversation is the real key bit there.
I was just going to say, and Chris genuinely didn't know that I was going to ask that question, so actually the fact that you had that off pat was quite impressive.
It's ingrained. I've been working on the customer journey for a very long time, but it's all good. But you helped me segue a little bit there quite nicely, because I saw something this week, finding the digital transformation sweet spot, and it was a comment from the Flowcast CFO, which is a big enterprise tool for workflow management, and they were basically saying that the CFO has the mandate to make transformation happen. But in a way, we need to stop looking at digital transformation as a one-off project, because business is always changing. The requirement from the business is always changing. Technology is always changing. Your people are always changing. So I think there's been a bit of a habit in the past to kind of get a team of people in externally, normally a load of consultants, externally recruited, and then they come in and they make some change and then they leave and things have transformed and ticked up a bit. But actually a lot of the knowledge leaves. And a lot of the people who have been in place don't feel that connected to the transformation. So we need to start looking at it as more of a journey for people, and not just like a one-off project.
It's interesting because the article's written by somebody who clearly is trying to sell a thing. And actually the conclusion of the article, as you've just said, is that transformation is more of a journey. And I think that really resonates. That it made me think of an example of when I first started work. I worked in an office where there was still a typing pool. Letters were being sent out and internal memos were the way of communicating. And then we had a digital transformation, which was the implementation of email. So email came in, we lost the typing pool. People then just banged out effectively exactly the same thing and sent it instantly.
How old are you? I didn't think you were that old.
I like to leave people guessing, right? So I'm not answering that question.
I know. Wow.
Moving from memos to emails was a digital transformation, and it ended. We are still now, like 20 years on, 30 years on, using emails as our default source of communication. And I like to think that digital transformation is a way of thinking. And actually, if you think about your personal life, I mean, how many times in the last 15 years have you upgraded your mobile phone? And why have you upgraded your mobile phone? And that's because the technology keeps on changing and keeps on iterating. And I think, so there's something in there about that mindset thing, and actually it's not one project and hey, look, we've digitally transformed. It's a series of incremental things that need to happen alongside sometimes big projects. So yeah, I find it quite an interesting.
You make a good point actually about, is it a job title, or is it a project, or is it a mindset? Digital transformation is, I know that there are concepts, the agile concepts and continuous improvement kind of concepts. I think that they go hand in hand with this space, where if you are thinking about continuously improving and those marginal gains and managing them in an agile way, then you are on that digital transformation path. Now your digital vision can be much bigger than that. It's not just about sort of small changes. It could be significant changes, but I think that, the point here, yes, they were talking about a bit of software, Flowcast, and it was from the CFO. But and there was this underlying pitch for sure. But what I like about this and calling it out, away from all the hype, is because the conclusion was it's not just about the tech. It's not just about buying licenses of that product, but it's about understanding change and buying a solution, and the CFO actually having a kind of long-term view on ROI, And also it was promoting the CFO as the transformer, because, and I've always felt this, and it's not always obvious to the business, but the CFO and the finance team has, a complete holistic view of the business. There's not a single door in the company that they cannot walk in, because they're responsible for the budget and talking to the budget holder. So it makes sense to me that transformation should be led by, or at least sponsored by, the CFO, because they're the one who can look at this holistically. And that doesn't mean, the budget holistically. It means the outcomes and, the overall transformation journey as a company, rather than just the finance transformation.
I broadly agree. I think the other bit that was in there, though, that actually just makes me slightly nervous around the focus on the finance bit in there was, there was a piece in the article about incentivization, which is, I'm going to paraphrase badly, but it's, if somebody comes to me and asks for a $500,000 license for a piece of software, then immediately I'm going to ask next year for them to make $500,000 worth of savings or increased revenue to show the benefit of that investment. It should be a neutral thing. And I think that is more transactional than this mindset approach, and the kind of digital transformation being a series of steps and a series of thought pieces. It might not be as direct line as that, as you invest in this and this is the return. And I think I think sometimes how we measure things and value of things, when it comes back to the numbers, it actually causes a problem. You won't have the benefits you expect, or your focus will be on financial benefits rather than actually business benefits potentially. So I like the article, and I agree with the points you're making. I just thought, for me, it didn't go far enough. For me, actually, it's about helping CFOs and the C-suite. Digital transformation is about helping CFOs and the C-suite understand the questions they need to ask and understand what good answers look like, rather than just a straightforward transactional relationship between an investment and a return.
You're leading neatly into the next point that I was going to make. So every time we're doing a podcast episode, we're asking people to submit their questions. We also have a community that runs along the side of this, the GENCFO community, and this one's plucked from the community. But if you do want to ask questions to us, then do send emails to podcast@generationcfo.com, or reach out to Mike and I via LinkedIn. The question that links to what you were just saying there was, do finance people really understand what is happening in IT? And I think the premise for this was a bit of research that I found from Vertis, which is a sort of cost-saving company that's out there for SaaS products, buying SaaS products. And it asked, I think it's like 500 CFOs and 500 CIOs, do they feel that the exec team understand the nature of cloud computing? And this was specifically, and costs associated to it. And 47.5% said no. And the rest said not sure. And only 21% said yes. 21.5% said yes. And it kind of, links to that point that you're making. That when we start getting into the detail of these things, do finance people really understand what IT service is? Do they understand what cloud is? Do they understand the difference between that and a data center? Can they really, understand cost in that space? Because, there might be, if I'm going to a data center and asking them to drive costs down because they're over budget, well, is that impacting significantly something on the business side? Is that impacting value elsewhere? So this is a bit of a worrying stat, I think, where we're saying, basically 3/4 of the board do not really understand what's happening in IT, and management of costs is quite difficult from a finance point of view. But so it's not just about the numbers, right?
And what's going through my head as you were describing that was, does IT understand finance? So does finance understand IT? Does IT understand finance? Do either of those understand legal and HR? And actually, what you're describing is a problem of communication and sharing problems and ambitions in a way which everybody understands and is simple, rather than organizational silos, which is, well, we'll leave the IT to the IT people, but we are in charge of their money, so we'll cut their costs. Or the IT people saying, well, finance need a new tool to do their whatever it is, so we'll just implement a new tool, but we won't ask them what they want. It actually links back to the first conversation around that we had earlier about the academy and talking about business partnering. Is how do you build better relationships across those expert silos within a business?
Yeah.
Not people call it silo busting, and it's not silo busting, because actually humans organize themselves into silos naturally. That's what happens. It's about making your silos porous, so information can communicate between the important bits of expert teams. And again, for me, that fundamentally underpins where the problems come from in digital data and other transformation approaches.
Well, you talked about mindset earlier, and this is another example, right? Exactly. Where business partner is just a name, it's just a job title. But actually, if it is a mindset and it works and it is a partnership and a collaboration, then you're stripping back these problems because you understand what's happening in the business. And there's also a point here that IT don't need to understand what's happening in the business, to get their job done. But you do need the collaboration and the group understanding of what the outcome should be, so that everyone can go and do their part. We talked a lot about rugby, but it's not like you're asking the backs to go and do the forwards job, or vice versa. You are just trying overall to score a try and win the game. So I think it's fine for people to, not have full knowledge if there is collaboration and if there is true business partnering. But I think, as we were hinting on, and we're definitely going to have to do something around business partnering.
And there's another part to that. So I agree. Something about business partnering. I've got an idea about something around leadership as well, because I think what you're also talking about is the difference between management and leadership. So, and this is my jargon, so it may not work, but so historically management is command and control, bosses telling people what to do. And in that structure, the bosses have to know more than the people that they're telling what to do. Whereas I think it's impossible for a boss now, a leader, to know everything. So it probably always was. So actually leadership is much more about knowing when you don't know and feeling comfortable and reassured to be able to say, look, I don't understand that. Can you explain it to me? Can you explain it to me so I understand it, rather than feeling this kind of fear of showing vulnerability that you don't understand? And so I'd love to know from that stat that you gave, how many of those leaders that were surveyed in their company would go to their IT CIO and say, I really don't understand cloud computing. Can you explain it to me?
Something else that I don't understand is this. So each week we're doing this good data, bad data section. I thought you shared something for this section this week, which I thought was brilliant.
Yeah. So you mentioned the rugby, and the Rugby World Cup's going on at the moment, and we're recording this just after the best weekend of rugby ever, which is the quarterfinals of the Rugby World Cup. And some of the matches were incredible. But quite a lot of rugby these days and training is based on statistics and match statistics. And so I just pulled out the match statistics from the game between France and South Africa. And it's incredible. So France, on all of the metrics, basically they 154 runs over 80 runs to South Africa. France had more. 82 carries over the gain line to 36. 156 passes to 82, 43 defenders beaten to 12. So all of the stats.
These are 2 or 3 times the gain, right? In terms of these KPIs are saying the gain is 2 or 3 times the other team.
Double, much, much, much better. But actually, in the end, all that mattered was that South Africa beat France by 1 point, 29 points to 28. So actually all of those stats and all of that data is largely irrelevant. Well, it's not even largely irrelevant. It's totally irrelevant because actually the French are now sitting at home, sipping wine, watching the rest of the World Cup.
Yeah. So I've got 2 sort of geeky loves in my life. One's data visualization, but bad data visualization. And the other one's sort of KPIs and metrics. I think it's my finance/BI days. and the Moneyball movie and all that sort of stuff. Where if you can find the secret KPI, then you're going to win out, cheat the casino. And I think maybe this highlights more than anything is that the game's changing, and the KPIs that we're measuring against, might be the wrong KPIs. Because I was listening to another podcast, and they were talking about one of the South African coaches who actually said that he selected the team on none of these KPIs. He had a new KPI, which was time in between involvement, which was like a tackle, a carry, a pass. And I think it pointed to sort of your influence on the game overall, or it pointed to, the impact on the opposition, because you're just constantly working against them, and after a while you're grinding them down. Maybe there are other KPIs that you need to consider in your data, rather than just the time old ones. And I point to leading KPIs versus lagging KPIs in analytics and things like that. It's really important to understand these things. But yeah, where does this go? Is this good data or bad data?
Oh, well, it's data, right? So the bad data is the fact that France have got all of these high scores. That's bad for them because they still lost. So I think you can put it in both senses. I mean, just on your point around are you measuring the right things? I think for me, it's an indication of almost like perverse incentives that sometimes happen with KPIs. And I'm not saying this is what happened in this case, but what you've just illustrated is, if the only metric that's being considered when coaching is beating defenders, what's proven by this is it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I mean, it may be in 9 times out of 10 it does, but that one time is the important one, right? So I think that it's just, you've also got to look at outcomes as well as indicators, I suppose, is where I'm going with this.
I love it. Well, I like the fact that you're keeping it topical and sporty after a sport that I love. But it won't always be about rugby and the sports. It's just that it's going on at the moment, only once every 4 years, which is all good. Look, I really enjoyed the conversation. I think, the messages for me is that we have the Academy coming up. If you're curious about that, there's a lot still to learn in terms of digital transformation generally. I do think that this is very much a core part of anybody's career now. So, if you're not really familiar with this, then obviously press subscribe and be interested in the other bits and bobs that we're doing, including the Academy. Reach out to Mike and I on LinkedIn. And like I said, if you do have any shout outs, then do let us know, podcast at generationcfo.com. And I'm really pleased to say we do have a shout out this week. And somebody connected with me on LinkedIn, Dave Slater, who is the Group Financial Controller at Mackenzie Stewart. And he said, would you mind plugging the fact that I am running 10K every day this year, all the way through to the last one on the 31st of December. That would be every day. He's been covered by the BBC. He's running for 2 charities, Candlelight's Children Cancer Charity, and Papyrus, which is a charity aimed at preventing young people's suicide. He's also training, if that wasn't enough, to be a mountain guide, where he's looking to sort of take people from the charity on trips, which is very therapeutic. So if you are interested in supporting David and those charities, reach out to David directly on LinkedIn, but he also has a website, dadrunning.co.uk, and you can find those 2 charities there to sponsor him. Kind of puts my training plan into perspective.
So I was just thinking that, I mean, if you wanted motivation, I don't think there's anything I can say other than refer you back to One Dad Running. I mean, that is incredible, right?
But look, thank you, Mike. Very insightful this week, and well done, even though you had a cold. And thank you guys for listening. And obviously, remember, it's not all about the numbers. Take care. Bye.